It's been about 5 years since the last Way of the Samurai game, 13 if you're talking about the mainline series. And while there have been other games since then that were kind of similar, such as Like a Dragon Ishin and Rise of the Ronin, there was a certain charm to the Way of the Samurai games. It had a very budget look to it, but with how much was going on in those games, I couldn't help but be impressed. So imagine my surprise when I found out that there's a new entry to the Way of the Samurai series. Well, not exactly. Amedama, released in September last year, is a side-scrolling hack-and-slash developed by Acquire Corporation, the makers of the Way of the Samurai series, and Izanagi Games, who seem to specialize in mystery visual novel hybrids. There isn't much to look at, but the rather simple yet unique look to the game made it enough for me to buy and finish. Now for those wanting that open-world samurai action the Way of the Samurai games had, temper your expectations. This is more like a spin-off of sorts, like Katana Kami or Samurai Western. And for those who are about to click off in a couple of seconds, I'd summarize this game as a combination of Ghost Trick and Slitherhead with samurais, but without the puzzle solving or extreme gore. Set in Aihama, near the end of the Edo era, Amedama follows Yushin and Yui, brother and sister, who work at an umbrella shop. Yushin is an aspiring samurai, while Yui is a mute. One day they are attacked by bandits, and while Yushin is more than capable in dispatching them, he is killed when Yui is caught. But instead of dying, Yushin is saved by a higher power, and left to roam the land as a spirit who can possess others, using these powers to save Yui before he can pass on. First led to believe that Yui was the target of bandits, Yushin follows the trail, only to find more questions than answers. Unfortunately, Yushin's time runs out, as he is ejected out of his possession. But instead of moving on, Yushin finds himself back at the riverbed at the start of the game's events. With the ability to loop back in time, Yushin has a week to figure out what's going on and hopefully save Yui from her kidnappers. While the idea of time loops has already been done, I thought it was a novel concept to have one set in Edo, Japan, as they're usually set during modern day or in the future. There are elements of this story that are pretty familiar to those who have played other Way of the Samurai games, such as the story beats and the characters, but it was still pretty intriguing enough to keep me hooked in. That said, it was pretty easy to figure out who the main villain was early on, but their relevance was something I didn't expect, though I probably could have guessed. The translations are decent enough, though some lines read a little stiff, and there were some grammatical errors, and some rather strange translation choices, but nothing immersion-breaking. Overall, I quite liked how straight and sincere the story played out, plus although the side missions were very bittersweet as well. Amedama is essentially a side-scroller version of Way of the Samurai. You remember how console games would usually have a handheld port, which would usually be a simplified version, but still pretty fun in its own right? This is what that game is. After the tutorial, you control Yushin in the soul form, which allows him to travel anywhere unimpeded. But as a spirit, he cannot interact with anything. To do so, he must soul shift, which allows him to possess another living being. The attack button allows Yushin to slam into his target, stunning them, before shifting into their bodies. However, he cannot just soul shift into anyone, only those with a special mark above their heads. To do that, he must defeat them in combat first, and when victorious, he'll be able to possess them whenever. Once in another body, Yushin is now able to interact with the world again. You'll be able to run around, talk and interact with others, even kick them. Though depending on who you provoke, they'll either run or fight back. And depending on who Yushin is possessing, he can access areas that are usually blocked off to others. This game is very linear, as you'll mainly be railroaded to different parts of the map to activate event flags that'll progress the story. But after the first loop, the game does give you a bit more freedom to explore, but there isn't much else to interact with, so you'll still be railroaded to different events. Often, these events will lead into combat. Combat in this game is very simple, especially compared to the Way of the Samurai series. At the top, there's your health, focus, and soul gauge, the latter of which allows Yushin to perform a special move. Every character shares the same combo list, but depending on who Yushin possesses, their attack speed and animation may change. But all of this can pretty much be disregarded due to Yushin's special technique, the Misty Riposte, a counter that trivializes most of the game. When guarding an attack, pressing the light attack button will cause Yushin to dash through the enemy, knocking them down and sometimes killing them in one blow. Although when fighting major bosses, they'll have attacks that you cannot parry or block, so you'll want to evade. But you can't block or evade forever, as Yushin's focus will drain. Once the focus gauge is empty, Yushin will be vulnerable. More often than not killing him, depending on how much health his current body has and how many enemies are on screen. When in combat, Yushin will not be able to soul shift, so he'll have to fight as whoever he is at that moment. But don't worry too much about dying, since Yushin is already dead, he'll just go back to the previous area, allowing you to find another character to possess, giving you as many tries as you want. Though if you happen to get killed with a strong character, it might be better to just reload the last save. As you progress a certain story branch, you'll be forced to fight a main character, easily identifiable due to their unique designs, and also their names are highlighted purple. These characters you'll want to possess, as they are very powerful, have unique skills and styles, and are very important to accessing certain story paths. Once an enemy is beaten, you'll notice that the number on the top right corner decreases. That is Yushin's soul glow, which represents how long he can possess a certain body. When the soul glow hits 0, Yushin will be forced out of the body and forced to possess another. You can recharge the soul glow by shifting into another body or going to the riverbed and praying to the statue. You can also improve how long the soul glow lasts by completing side missions. These are RIP quests, missions where Yushin will help lingering spirits move on, and memory quests, missions where Yushin will relive past events related to main characters. When soul shifting, health does not regenerate, meaning that Yushin will have to eat. You can do this by buying food from restaurants and stands or eating whatever drops from enemies and jars. When buying food, they will grant bonus status effects. You can have up to 8 status effects, but these do not transfer to other characters. While food can be pricey, don't worry too much about money because enemies will drop them pretty often, with stronger characters dropping quite a lot. Though if you do want to grind for money, make sure to eat the white bait bowl and dojo hotpot as they'll increase money drop, or you can play Chichiron or Silo. If you want tips on that, I can't help you there because it's very heavily RNG based. The tutorial says to land on the center of the bar to get better chances of winning, but every time I did so, I would always lose. Going back to the story, as I mentioned earlier, Yushin has 7 days before being forced back to the start of the story. If you want to, you can choose to loop to the start whenever. The only thing this affects is story progression, as looping back allows Yushin to carry over everything, his levels, side mission progression, and even his money. Now, while I did enjoy the gameplay, there are some aspects that are frustrating, which again is in line with the Way of the Samurai games. First off, it's very easy to get stun locked, especially when there are lots of enemies. If you get knocked down, there is no easy way of getting back up again, as you can find yourself getting hammered by enemies on all sides, which is the main cause of most of my deaths. That's not to say you can't recover, but the chances are quite slim. Secondly, with the bosses, their AI can be pretty unfair at times. Not that they're hard or anything, some might make you work for your win, but sometimes they'll perform their special moves many times in a row, which stops you from getting a hit in. I finished this game on normal, but I did try harder difficulties, and all it seems to do is cause enemies to have more health, deal more damage, and get more aggressive. I didn't get too far into it because you have to start a new save file if you want to play on harder difficulties, and I don't want to sit through dialogue boxes that I've already seen. Once you finish the main story, you'll unlock a gauntlet mode called Yushin's Infinite Slash, where you play as Yushin, taking down every enemy in the game with only 1 life. Amedama is a very pretty game, a sort of mix between a GBA and a PS1 game. It gives off a budget look to it, but I think that's what gives it its charm. Character designs are quite nice, and I also like the very low polygonal design of the character models. Environment designs are also quite pleasing, and I do like how the entire game is pretty much set in the rain. Also, I'm pretty sure most of the animation in this game are ones from Way of the Samurai, which fans of the series might get a kick from. I know I did. This game has a very traditionally Japanese soundtrack with lots of shamisen and shakuhachi incorporated into the music. The exploration music can sound rather droning at times, but the combat music is more than enough to perk you up. Due to the game being set where rain is constantly pouring, there's lots of raindrops and wind sounds, which makes the game give off a rather comfy ASMR tone when not in combat. Voice acting is very minimal, with characters only talking in grunts or single words. The only time where there's full spoken lines are from the narrator, and a certain moment in the game that I won't spoil. Overall, this is very much a Way of the Samurai spin-off in all but name. While it's an incredibly simple game, it was still pretty enjoyable to play. I liked how the branching storyline mechanics of Way of the Samurai were implemented into the story, though I can see how the rather linear nature of the game can be something not for everyone, especially those who enjoy the sandbox nature of the Way of the Samurai games. But I can see Amedama being enjoyed by those who are looking for something they can just pick up and play. Plus, for this game, you don't have to look up a guide to see what you need to do to get the endings you want. Mentioned earlier, the combat, while fine for the most part, is simple, but can be frustrating at times with how easy it is to get stunlocked, and the boss AI can be spammy at times. I will say, once you do finish unlocking all paths and side quests, there isn't much else to do. It's a pretty short game, taking only about 14 hours to get all branching paths and complete the main story and side quests. There is a demo available, so if you're interested, give that a try. And if that does make you want to get it, the game goes for about $15 on sale, which is a fairly reasonable price, I'd say.